What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the name Epicurus? Well, like most people, you probably associate the name of this Greek philosopher with a lifestyle that is based on the pursuit of pleasure. An Epicurean lifestyle, as it is so aptly named, is one which values feeling good above anything else. And what are some things that are supposed to make us feel good? Well, typically food, sex, wealth, and other luxuries. Yet, while Epicurus did in fact propound hedonism, or the pursuit of pleasure as the highest aim of human life, his view of pleasure was far from what we've come to stereotypically view today. For Epicurus, a pleasant life was one that was in fact free from unnecessary sensuous pleasure. Instead, he advocated for inner tranquility, aka ataraxia. To achieve this, one had to be content with the simple things in life. Well, for instance, having a philosophical conversation with friends, to Epicurus, was more valuable than the pursuit of pleasure such as food or sex. Yet, Epicurus believed that there was still one nagging, omnipresent cloud hanging over humanity at all times that caused us so much suffering. And what was that? Well, our fear of death. Epicurus strongly believed that the one proper goal of philosophy was to alleviate human misery. And according to him, all human misery was caused by an ever-present knowledge of the inevitability of our demise. This awareness of death was deemed to interfere with our lives to the point that many individuals develop a hatred of life itself. He emphasized that for the majority of us, our fear of death is not a conscious threat. Instead, he wrote that we are extremely good at being able to disguise this anxiety by immersing ourselves wholeheartedly into other pursuits such as the accumulation of wealth and being overly religious. However, for Epicurus, these activities only give us a false sense of immortality and never allow us to fully come to terms with our death anxiety. Throughout his life, Epicurus attempted to alleviate this bludgeoning fear in the individual by constructing well-thought-out arguments that sought to diminish the grip of fear death has over us. Now, these arguments have been debated over the millennia following Epicurus' death, but they still hold ground today in being able to address our anxieties. Let's take a quick look at 3 of his well-known arguments that are still used in existential psychotherapy today to treat that anxiety. Number 1. The mortality of the soul. Epicurus believed that the soul was composed of atoms that were dispersed across the body. Thus, being a physical entity that is a part of us, Epicurus noted that the soul is mortal and does not survive the death of the body. So, how is this supposed to help our death anxiety and not make it feel worse? Well, as we no longer possess any consciousness once we die, this means that there cannot be any punishment after death, nor any regrets for the life that has been lost. This idea is especially powerful against religious dogma that dictates the everlasting punishment of those who do not abide by the rules laid upon us in Holy Scripture. Epicurus did believe in the existence of gods, but did not think that they had any involvement in human affairs. He did not believe in an afterlife with raging fire and demons with pitchforks taunting us for all eternity. Neither did he believe in a place of eternal bliss with angels and harps. Instead, he believed in nothingness. Number 2. Death as annihilation. According to Epicurus, if all aspects of the body disintegrate at death, that is, both body and soul, then death would be nothing to us, as we cannot perceive it. Also dubbed as the no subject of harm agreement, this argument puts forth the idea that if death is bad, then who can it be bad for? Well, certainly not for the living, since they are not dead, and neither for the dead, since they don't exist and cannot perceive anything. Hence, for something to be bad, you have to be alive to experience it being unpleasant in the first place. Death and I can never coexist. So when we die, we won't know that we're dead. And if we need to be alive to feel, then death isn't going to cause us any pain. In that case, there's no reason to be afraid of death now. Number 3. The Symmetry Argument. Epicurus' third argument to quell that anxiety is that we should contemplate and contrast a state of non-being after death with the time before our birth. He says that these two states of non-being are identical. It's as if nature has given us an insight into how a future period of non-existence would look like. Yet we spend much of our time concerned and fearful with the period of non-existence that comes after our life than the one that came before. Epicurus argues that if we do not look back at a time of not having existed for an eternity with dread, then we should not waste our time thinking about our impending demise to be any different. Epicurus believed that philosophy served a true purpose in that it attempts to treat the soul, just as a doctor may treat the body for ailments. And while we may not have a lot of answers to some of the unnerving facts of life, philosophers such as Epicurus help guide us in our quest to quell some of our discomfort as self-aware beings. Death anxiety may or may not be a conscious concern to you at the moment, but we know that we all have to face up to our own demise someday. That's a given reality. If Epicurus' arguments may not give you the solace you need to rationalize and soothe your death anxiety, then maybe what is important to take from Epicurus' arguments is the universality of the human condition. Like you, me, and everyone else who's alive or has ever lived, we all have to, or have had to, grapple with accepting our own mortality. Whether it's a person who lived more than 2,000 years ago in another corner of the world, or the person right next to you. Our discomfort with death is something that we all share and have to contend with throughout our lives. Perhaps there is some consolation in knowing that some of the greatest thinkers who have ever lived know exactly what you're going through.